Hello, BookTube. Recently, Ollie of CriminOlly, he of the Satanic 100 Book Challenge that got into the guilty consciences of so many booktubers, where he suggested, gently, politely, that maybe you read 100 books you already own before you buy another book to add to the pile. Ollie recently did a follow-up video to a little thing that is regular on his channel now, and I felt such a compulsion to make a response video of my own, but I just went ahead and did it. He is periodically revisiting books on his Kindle, on the Kindle app on his iPad, and just talking about them. Have I read this one yet? Have I read this, and what do I think about it? That sort of thing. He did that a while ago, and I made a tag out of he and Michael K. Vaughan both did this, and I made a tag out of it for you to show me what's on your reading app. Doesn't have to be a Kindle. Doesn't even have to be the Kindle app. Whatever you do your electronic reading on, you know as well as I do that no matter where you do it, you accumulate books. I wanted to see some of those books. And Ollie just recently did, CriminOlly recently did another video where, I'll leave a link to it, where he went through 10 or so more books on his Kindle. And if he can do it, I can do it. So I will leave a link to his video, and I want to show you a few more of the things that I found when I went hunting around myself. The first one being an electronic copy of an old comic book. Go figure. This is Turok, Son of Stone. Don't know who owns the rights to these old vintage gold key Turok comics. Don't know of any idea if they're being reprinted. Anybody's bothering to save the original issues or clean up any of the original boards or artwork or anything like that. People should be. This is all archival stuff. This captured the dreams and the imagination of some young person somewhere. It should all be caught. It should all be remembered. It should all be cleaned up and put in an archival form. But this is issue number. I don't know that these were even numbered. Turok and his partner were trapped in a weird alternate lost world that had all sorts of monsters and weird tribes and dinosaurs. But he himself, they were Native Americans, and they just used their own skills to try and survive in that world. And this was 12 cents. And this is the title, I think, is A Monster from the Past. This comes to Lost Valley, destroying everything in sight. There are our two heroes, and that, I guess, is the artist's rendition of a T-Rex, maybe. Of course, the thing I want to draw your attention to is the guns on this thing. This T-Rex does not have tiny little T-Rex arms. This thing has arms that could really hit some personal bests at the weight room at Gold's Gym, and also those huge bright white teeth. Just a classic. It's got an arrow up its nose. That would annoy me too. I don't remember what happens in this issue at all, but then again, I wasn't a huge Turok Son of Stone fan. There were Gold Key productions that I liked a lot more, including especially Magnus Robot Hunter. Am I right in remembering that was Gold Key? They had much better covers, and the story was also great. It was far future science fiction, in which robots are all over the place. They run everything. They are servants everywhere. They are workers everywhere, and some of them go haywire, and one man, a flesh and blood human being, has been trained since birth to fight robots with his bare hands. I love those stories. I have no idea who owns those either, but this next one is by Peggy Rathman, and it is Goodnight Gorilla. And it's a zookeeper who's going home for the night, and the animals steal his keys and escape one by one. But they're very well mannered about it. They're not trying to cause trouble. Then we have a novel from about 15 years ago. I think I wrote about this book. If I did, I'll try to remember to find it and leave a link. This is by Abby Jenny, Geni. Jenny. Don't think I've ever read anything else by this author. This is The Lightkeepers. A novel in which the main character goes to a research station on the Farallon Islands off the coast of California. And there's a weird small cast of people who live there, and there are weird people who come to supply the island. And there's also there's a little bit of skullduggery on the island. That is the gist of the plot. But in addition to that, there's also a trio of enormous great white sharks called the Sisters, who routinely visit the islands, the water around the islands. They hunt there. And that is certainly factual. The space between the mainland and the Farallon Islands is, most parts of the year, a very active feeding ground for great white sharks. Very active. There are places on the cliffs overlooking the water on land, on the mainland. There are places houses, living rooms where I have been, where a fond thing to do is among the family is just to keep a high-powered telescope trained on the water, looking for what one little girl in the family years and years ago described as red blooms, where you'll be looking at the water. There'll be maybe a few white caps. There'll be beautiful, the Farallon Islands in the slight middle ground distance, and then on the water suddenly a patch of red will appear because a shark has killed a seal. If I don't know if anyone has actually been crazy enough to try to swim from shore to the Farallon Islands, but I don't think you'd live if you did. It's a very active shark breeding ground. And I remember liking the book. I don't think I've ever heard anything more about the author. I'd never seen the book again. I got the advanced copy and then the finished copy from the publisher, the e-copy along the way, but I got rid of them all. I don't have it anymore. I'd love to revisit it, see if it was more effective than I thought. Then we have a Library of America volume. This is Lauren Isley, and this is a collected essays on evolution, nature, and the cosmos. This is volume 2, which includes The Invisible Pyramid, The Night Country, and essays from his book, The Star Thrower. Lovely, lovely thing. I'm pretty sure that Library of America puts volume 1 and volume 2 together in a box set. But they also do them individually with color photographs on the cover instead of the usual black and white photograph and whatnot. If you have not made the acquaintance of Lauren Isley as a popular scientist and nature writer, you really should. He's incredible. Really, really good. Not currently in print, I think, anywhere other than Library of America, but well worth your time to find. Then we have this book by Devin Leonard. This was terrific. It's called Neither Snow Nor Rain. It's a history of the U.S. postal system. And it's great. Just great. Starts off at the very beginning. Of course, there's the requisite amount of attention paid to the Pony Express. But the most fascinating parts of the book are the relatively contemporary parts, especially the 20th century, when the post office expanded like crazy, started to take on its own autonomous identity within the United States government. And the author makes a lot of terrific points that have been made elsewhere, but they're made really well in this book about the odd nature of the U.S. postal system that you won't really think about. You won't really think about how much work is done by the workers in this system. You won't think about the extent and the reach of this system, the mail in various parts of the United States that is delivered by boat or by donkey. You won't really think about that. You also won't think about, again, this point has been made by other people, but this author makes a point of reminding you that the U.S. postal system means that a government employee is physically touching every single address in the country every day. That's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. There are all sorts of postmasters general are profiled in here, all sorts of great anecdotes of things that postal delivery workers have encountered over the years, over the decades. Just a terrific book. Again, I've never seen it. I've never seen it since I originally got it, so I don't have it in my collection. I would like to, and I might want this next one in my collection as well. Even though when I first read it, I had no idea that David Murphy existed. David Murphy was probably a high school student at the time, but I liked it. And now I look over my shoulder when I read anything about anything connected with economics or finance. I now look over my shoulder wondering, well, okay, I liked it, but maybe it's not any good. And now I know who to ask on whether or not it's any good. This is by Charles Morris, and it's called A Rabble of Dead Money. And it's about the Great Crash and the Global Depression, 1929 to 1939. And I thought this was excellent. Just fantastic. I loved it. And like I say, now I'm looking over my shoulder because although nothing that David Murphy would say about how the finances are discussed in this book can change the fact that I enjoyed reading it, right? As we say on this channel all the time. Your enjoyment of what you read is entirely yours. David would no more want to attack that enjoyment than I would. But I'm now curious to know if this is also considered a good book on the subject. I wouldn't know. Because it does talk a lot about national and especially international finance, and I don't know enough about those things to know whether or not this is a particularly good job at doing that, but I thought it was terrific reading. Okay, then we have something that we've seen on this channel. I have this this book buried on my Kindle, but I also have had the physical copy many times on this channel. Years ago, 5 years ago, we saw me get the advanced copy in the mail, I think from Yale. Then I got the finished copy, got rid of both of them, and then I think I've also hauled a secondhand copy of the finished copy or the trade paperback. It's terrific. I don't know why I don't keep it. Actually, I do know why, because one of you will pipe up in the comment section saying that you really want it and you live in a used book desert, so you'll never get it on your own, and you don't want to shop online. That's all it takes. I'm such a softie. That's all it takes. I don't blame you at all that you don't want to shop for used books online. Online book vendors tend to just plain lie. You know, that the fact that you don't want to risk doing that and the irritation and the disappointment does not at all make you a stereotypical 21st century snowflake, okay? Because Todd Oval, Sean Standfast, Mark Richardson is about as far away from a 21st century snowflake as you can get, and none of them like doing it. You do it if you have to, but it's shameful how horrible it is and how hit and miss it is. So if one of you says, well, I just saw that book on your channel and I really want it, it's really interesting to me, and I don't have any bookstores anywhere near me and I don't want to shop online, that's probably why I got rid of all these. This is Carlos Eyre. It's Reformations, his big book about the various, not just what we stereotypically think of as the Protestant Reformation, but the waves of reformations that gripped Europe for the better part of 2 centuries. Just terrific book. Don't know why. I next time I find a copy of this, I'm going to hold on to it. The next time the random chance throws one my way, I'm going to hold on to it. Unlike this next one, which I read and dutifully reviewed. I'll find my review if I can. This is The Fireman by Joe Hill. In which it was this book finally that determined me that the apple doesn't fall far from the completely talentless tree. And I believe I said as much in my review, which is pretty full-throated. This is a overdone, overbearing, overwritten, unbelievably ham-handed, look ma, I'm writing, cheap theatrical horror novel by the son of Stephen King. Didn't like it, and largely it turned me off on giving this guy the benefit of the doubt, which means that I am now working on denying the benefit of the doubt to 2 whole generations of this family. This is pretty wild. This next one, I think, was a University Press production. I would love to find a copy. Don't know why I got rid of it. But this is by Tim Crane, and it is The Meaning of Belief. And this is an atheist who looks at the history of the fact that human societies, individual humans, are always have this element. That the people and societies that just don't have the element of religion, just don't even think about it, just don't have any interest in it at all, are vanishingly rare. Usually it is concomitant with humans in the individual and the aggregate. And this author tries to look at why and what that means, what that does to society. There are parts of it that I very much didn't like at all. I can't stand it when people who write this kind of book insinuate that humans are hardwired for faith. I really can't stand it when writers do that. That isn't true. That simply isn't true. It's an absolutely smothering, universal, social constant, but that's not the same thing as being hardwired for it at all. We have enough evidence to know that. But this next one is not Turok, Son of Stone, but it is weird that it would be in the bowels of my Kindle. This is The Crime Cult. It's a shadow novel. If I remember correctly, there are a bunch of dead bodies that are found with little brands on the forehead, and the shadow has to figure out why, because the cops have no idea. And once again, this is not Tolstoy. It was very, very enjoyable, but it's not Tolstoy. And what I want here is the same thing that I rant about all the time. Where is the curation? Where is the sense of archival preservation? Not to mention the fact that these things would do well. I imagine that it's just a Byzantine complication of copyright holders. That's probably the reason why. But what I want here, this great old vintage cover artwork for the shadow, there are thousands, literally thousands of examples of this. No one knows who owns the right to that artwork. The artists, their heirs, their family, probably their hometown block, it's all gone. There's no reason why someone can't come out with a nice uniform run of either paperbacks or hardcovers with this old great vintage artwork. and just reprint these shadow things, and Doc Savage, and the Avenger, and a whole bunch of other things. The Spider. Make sure these things are available not just in little hole-in-the-wall publishers full of, geeky enthusiasts. Make sure these are available. Make sure that they're saved from the ravages of time. I can't believe I'm getting on such a highfalutin lecture about such a dumb book. But nevertheless, like I mentioned with Turok, Son of Stone, these things ought to be saved. We ought to be preserving these things. And we aren't. We aren't. If you go to your bookstore, you cannot buy a shadow novel in any format. You can't buy a big anthology with archival artwork. You can't buy anything like that. You can't buy a cheap paperback. You can't buy anything like that. You can't experience this thing. Or Doc Savage, Man of Bronze, or anything like that. You can't go and experience these things. You can experience something like this period, because you might, if you go to a bookstore and your bookstore is especially well stocked, you might be able to find a John Carter of Mars novel or Tarzan of the Apes, so you maybe could experience some of the fantastic literature of roughly this time period, but not these pulp things, and they should be preserved. Not just on my Kindle. Oh, okay, this next one was an oversized picture book. I hardly recommend it to you if you're a dog person. It's by Christian Valer, and it's called Treat. And all it is a series of pictures where the photographer sets up a dog or multiple dogs in front of a camera against a backdrop, high definition camera, and then throws a treat at them. That's all it is. That's all it is page after page after page of dogs lunging for treats. It is unbelievably enjoyable. Just unbelievably enjoyable. It's like a dry land version of that famous dog picture book that captures dogs in their first minute underwater when dogs are diving into the water. This is sort of a dry land version of that. Totally adorable. Just totally. And if I were to ask you, hypothetically, which breed of dog was so adenoidal and up in their own head and contrary that when a treat was thrown at them, they did not lunge for it, and you were to maybe say beagles, oh, I'm not saying that you'd be wrong. This next one is, I'm going to say Richard Kapuscinski. I'm probably not polishing that up enough, but this is Travels with Erotis, where the author just tracks a lot of the locations and the routes and the countries that are immortalized in the histories of Herodotus, and shows you what they're like, interviews lots of people, gives you lots of contemporary travel writing. Very good. It's not original to this author, but a very good spine on which to drape a modern work of travel writing. Wish I still had this as one of a handful of Herodotus-related books that I would like to still have. And then this next one is a slim volume of poetry. We may have seen it on this channel. This is Waiting for the Past by Les Murray. Let's get the little blue dot out of there. A lovely thing. I think we might have seen this on this channel, or maybe I got it right before we started talking to each other. I got this just as matter of course in the mail from the publisher. And Les Murray will probably show up at some point in my daily poem because I kind of like him. I kind of like his poetry. So I didn't object to this book at all. I don't have it. I didn't keep it except for this e-copy. And then we'll finish up with a bird book, just like the beautiful bird book that I got yesterday. Only I didn't keep this. No idea why. Must have given it to somebody, but I have no idea why I wouldn't keep it, because it's right up my alley. This is Why Birds Matter, Avian Ecological Function and Ecosystem Services. It's going to wash out a little because the cover is all bright white, and I'm not even going to attempt those names. But as you can tell from the subtitle, this is a far wonkier look at birds. It's what they actually do in the ecosystem. Managing insect populations, cross-pollinating plants, that sort of thing. It's what they actually, the roles that they serve in the ecosystem and why those roles are important. So a very good kind of companion book to the more popular kind, like the one we saw yesterday, which is just a celebration of birds. Birds are easy to celebrate because they're so charismatic and they're so beautiful and they're so omnipresent. But they also serve vital ecological roles, and there aren't enough books, I think, that are this good about them. wish that I still had this. Of all the ones in this collection, I wish that I still had this. I would go back to it. I'm sure that I would, especially since birds are. I probably got this 15 years ago for Open Letters Monthly, and in those 15 years, birds have undergone an absolute decimation of their numbers in the wild. So, the ecological observations in this book are more important, more vital now than they ever have been, and I don't have the book. But anyway, this was just a quick tour through some books that are buried in my e-reader, mainly because CriminOlly did it. if he makes a video like this, I'm almost certainly going to make a response of my own, because we all have thousands of books sitting around on these devices. They might as well have their day in the sun. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now. That's quite enough videos for me for one day, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.